Welcome to the deep dive. We've got a really compelling stack of sources in front of us today.
We really do.
And our mission here is to just extract the absolute most important insights from it. We are looking at a breakdown of how Steve Jobs built an empire. But I want to clarify right away, this is not a standard, dry biography.
Right. No timelines of product launches here.
Exactly. The sources we're unpacking today, they strip away all that mythology and attempt to map out the raw architecture of a rebel.
It's a completely different way to analyze success, honestly, because the central thesis of our source material is actually a quite provocative in its framing. It argues that Jobs didn't just build computers.
Yeah.
He built a religion.
A religion, yeah.
I mean, most people look at the iPhone in their hand and they just see a piece of technology, right? Glass, metal, some silicon.
Sure.
They don't see the underlying operating system of the mind that actually brought it into existence.
I really love that phrase, operating system of the mind, because if you think about it, a computer's OS dictates exactly what software can and cannot run. Precisely.
If your mental OS is outdated, your output is going to be incredibly limited no matter how hard you work.
It's a bottleneck.
A massive bottleneck. And the sources lay out these 6 specific success codes that took a literal garage hobby and turned it into a trillion-dollar reality.
It is just staggering scale.
Right. But the practical application for you, the listener, is to view these not as ancient business history, but as an intellectual framework that you can apply to your own career or your own creative projects today. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
The first concept the text explores is this idea of an inner circle filter.
And this first filter immediately challenges conventional wisdom. I mean, the standard advice in business, or really any collaborative effort, is to go out and acquire the quote-unquote best talent.
The A players.
Right, you look for the highest test scores, the most impressive resumes, the undeniable A players. But the text points out a really crucial pivot. Jobs didn't seek the objectively best talent. He sought the right talent.
Wait, I want to pause on that because on paper, that sounds incredibly risky. It does.
I mean, if I'm building a team, why wouldn't I want the absolute smartest person in the room? The sources even mention that he would actually fire A players who just didn't get it.
You did.
Think about the psychological friction of that in a real meeting room. You have an expert, someone who is technically brilliant at their specific job, and you just let them go. Why?
Because an expert without vision is actually a liability to a rebellion.
A liability.
Think about how a hyper-rational A player operates. They look at data, they look at what is currently possible, and they optimize for safety.
Right, incremental growth.
Exactly, incremental growth. But if you are trying to do something impossible, that cynical realism acts like a virus in the team. It kills momentum.
It totally drags everyone down.
You have to stop networking with experts who are just there to punch a clock, no matter how highly skilled they are. You need to surround yourself with people who aren't working for a paycheck. You need people who are working for a legacy.
That distinction right there between a paycheck and a legacy, that fundamentally changes the energy of the room.
It shifts everything.
Because a paycheck means you stop when the clock hits 5 p.m. or, you stop when the technical problem just gets a little too hard.
It's transactional.
Right, it's a transaction. But working for a legacy means you are aligned on creating something that outlasts you. It requires a completely different type of intellectual fuel, which actually bridges right into the second concept our sources highlight.
The useless advantage.
Yes, the useless advantage.
This is perhaps the most crucial psychological insight in the entire text, I think. It centers around a very specific historical detail. Back in 1974, Jobs took a calligraphy class.
A calligraphy class.
Right. And at the time, learning how to draw beautiful, sweeping letters by hand was considered entirely useless for someone interested in technology and computers.
There was zero practical application for it.
None.
Right. It's not like it was a prerequisite for engineering.
Not at all. What's fascinating here is how the brain trains itself to see the world. Because in a calligraphy class, you aren't just learning to write. You are learning about spatial relationships. You are learning about the emotional weight of a curve.
The necessary white space between a T and an H.
Exactly. It trains the eye to recognize what feels inherently human and beautiful. So a decade later, when they were designing computers, that so-called waste of time calligraphy class is exactly what gave the world digital typography.
Beautiful fonts on a screen didn't come from a computer science textbook.
No, they came from an art class.
Yeah.
When you were looking at a cold, sterile computer interface, your brain subconsciously applies those rules of visual harmony you learned elsewhere.
You're importing humanity into the machine.
Exactly. And the underlying rule our sources pull from this is ironclad. Diversity of input equals originality of output.
Diversity of input equals originality of output.
It is a fundamental law of creativity. If you only read business books, you are only going to have business ideas.
You will be stuck in a professional echo chamber.
A complete echo chamber.
And it's the ultimate trap, especially now. We get so hyper-specialized that our daily reading list looks exactly like our competitors' reading list.
Which is dangerous.
Right, because if your inputs are identical to everyone else in your industry, your output is going to be identical too.
It'll just blend in.
So if you're listening to this right now, the source essentially challenges you to evaluate your own intellectual inputs. Where are you pulling your inspiration from? Are you reading about biology?
Are you studying architecture?
Right. Are you looking at the stars? Because the true magic of originality doesn't come from staring harder at your own industry's data. It comes from collecting these totally unrelated invisible dots.
And being the very first person to connect them.
Exactly.
That is the architecture of a rebel right there. They allow themselves to wander intellectually. But there is a secondary challenge here.
Okay.
Once you connect those invisible dots, once you have that brilliant original idea, you still have to convince the rest of the world to actually care about it.
Which is the hardest part.
It is. And that transition requires a really deep understanding of consumer psychology.
Which moves us into the third major takeaway from the text. Don't sell features, sell futures.
Yes.
Our sources use this brilliant contrast to explain the shift. On one side, imagine a boring text list of technical specs.
Bullet points.
Right, bullet points. On the other side, you have a person staring at a beautiful sunrise holding an iPhone. The messaging difference is everything. The device wasn't marketed to the public as having 5 GB of storage.
No one cares about 5 gigabytes.
Right. It was pitched as 1,000 songs in your pocket. So what does this all mean?
It means we have to completely rethink why human beings make decisions. The psychological reality is that people do not buy products.
They don't.
They don't buy objects made of glass or metal or code. They buy better versions of themselves.
That is a fascinating way to frame it, buying a better version of yourself.
Well, it's the only thing that actually motivates action. When I hear 5 gigabytes of storage, I have to do mental math.
Right. How many megabytes is a song?
Exactly. It creates cognitive load. It's a feature, a technical fact. But when I hear 1,000 songs in your pocket, I instantly visualize my future self.
Yes.
I see myself on a train, looking out the window, perfectly soundtracking my life. The friction of the technology just disappears, and I am suddenly cooler, calmer, more inspired.
You are buying the feeling of being a music aficionado. You're buying the soundtrack to your own movie.
Absolutely.
And this framework applies to absolutely everything, not just trillion-dollar tech launches. If you are selling a service, or even if you are just pitching an idea to your boss in a Tuesday morning meeting, you cannot focus entirely on how the engine works.
No, people are overwhelmed.
They don't have the bandwidth to care about the engine. They care about the destination. You have to tell them how this idea changes their daily life. You are selling a future state of being.
But here is the catch that the sources quickly pivot to.
There's always a catch.
Delivering on that beautiful, seamless future state requires extreme discipline. You cannot sell a simple, elegant future if your execution is cluttered with compromises.
Right.
Which brings us to a massive misconception about strategy.
You're talking about the concept of focus, which the text labels as the power of no.
Yes.
And they highlight a staggering historical fact to illustrate this. When Jobs returned to Apple in 1997, he didn't just walk in and tweak a few marketing campaigns.
He didn't?
He killed 70% of their products. 0.
70%.
He effectively burned the vast majority of the company's output to the ground.
It's unbelievable. But we connect this to the bigger picture. We uncover what true focus actually demands. Most people think focus is the act of saying yes to the one big important thing.
Right, finding your passion project.
They think it's about enthusiasm for a core project. But enthusiasm is easy. True focus is the excruciating discipline of saying no to 100 other incredibly good ideas.
And saying no to a good idea is physically painful for us.
It really is.
In behavioral psychology, there's this concept called loss aversion. Basically, the pain of losing something feels roughly twice as intense as the joy of gaining something equal. So when you look at a product line and say, let's kill this, the human brain just panics. We think, But wait, that product might make us a little bit of revenue. That specific feature might please a few vocal clients.
Right. You don't want to leave money on the table.
Exactly. We default to clutter because saying yes to everything feels safe. It feels productive.
Precisely. It feels like hedging your bets.
Yeah.
But the text lingers on this really powerful philosophy. Complexity is easy. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication.
Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication.
Adding features is the lazy way out of a design problem.
Well, that's good.
It requires no tough decisions in the boardroom. You just keep bolting things on to please everyone. But sweeping the desk entirely clean, throwing away the clutter until absolutely nothing remains, except a single perfect logo, that takes immense courage.
It does.
You're forcing yourself to stand behind one singular, undeniable vision rather than hiding behind a messy pile of compromises.
I love that visual of sweeping the desk clean. It's visceral, but let's be realistic for a second. Trying to execute this level of extreme focus, trying to push this kind of uncompromising vision into the world, it is going to cause friction.
Huge amounts of freedom.
People will push back. And sometimes it blows up in your face completely,
It does.
which is where the text introduces the concept of the primal passion.
And the source material doesn't sugarcoat the blowback at all.
Yeah.
It describes this inevitable setback beautifully and brutally. It calls it the brick to the head.
The brick to the head, getting fired from the very company that you started.
Brutal.
It's not just a professional setback, it's the ultimate public humiliation. Your ego is entirely tied to this entity and it rejects you.
Right.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. He doesn't just walk away and retire to an island. He starts another company, NextXT, and eventually maneuvers his way right back into Apple. I'm looking at this part of the source, and I have to ask, does the text explain how someone's ego actually survives that kind of psychological brick to the head without just, giving up?
It does. And it answers it by differentiating between two entirely different types of motivation. There's a profound difference between doing something for $100 million and doing something for the love of the craft.
Okay, break that down for me.
Think about the risk-reward matrix. If your ultimate goal is just the money or the status or the fame, the moment things get unimaginably hard, the moment you take that brick to the head, you will quit.
You'd have to.
And rationally, you should. If it's a transactional pursuit, the pain is no longer worth the payoff. You cut your losses.
Right.
But if you possess a primal passion, if you are driven by a deep, almost irrational love for the craft of building itself, the rules change entirely.
So the motivation acts as a shield.
It acts as a purifier. Because of that primal passion, a massive, catastrophic public failure doesn't permanently destroy you. It destroys the ego, certainly, but it leaves the drive intact.
It's a reset.
Exactly. It just becomes a reset button for greatness. It strips away all the noise and leaves only the pure desire to create.
It's the difference between playing a game to win a shiny trophy and playing a game because you literally cannot imagine drawing breath without playing it.
That's it.
That primal passion is the fuel. And according to the sources, that fuel is absolutely required to power the final stage of this operating system.
Think different.
Think different, or the rebellion.
This is where everything synthesizes. The inner circle you curated, the diverse, useless inputs you collected, the radical simplicity you fought for, and the resilience forged by that brick to the head.
It all builds to this.
They all lead to this fundamental refusal to accept the world exactly as it is. It's the conscious decision to, as the text says, dent the universe.
Dent the universe. What a phenomenal phrase.
It really is.
It implies that the universe isn't just this vast, untouchable void that happens to us. It frames reality as a physical fabric that you, the individual listening to this right now, can actually strike hard enough to leave a permanent mark.
A permanent mark.
It brings to mind that famous campaign ethos highlighted in our sources, the crazy ones.
Which raises an important analytical question.
Yeah.
Why does the text specifically glorify the crazy ones?
Why them?
It's because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the only ones who actually do.
Right.
To look at a massive entrenched industry or a deeply ingrained societal norm and declare, I can build something better, that requires a level of audacity that looks like absolute insanity to the average rational person.
Because the rational person says, this is how it's always been done, let's just optimize it by 5%.
Exactly, just play it safe.
But the rebel says, the way it's always been done is broken, let's build an entirely new system. It requires you to stop being a passive passenger in life. You can't just consume the future.
You have to actively build it.
You have to build it, and I think that really brings us to the final synthesis of this entire deep dive.
We've covered a tremendous amount of psychological ground today.
We really have. We've taken this high-energy look at a Titan's operating system and broken it down into actionable frameworks. We started with the input phase.
Right.
The courage to filter your inner circle to find the right talent working for a legacy, and the necessity of seeking out useless knowledge to spark true originality and break out of your echo chamber.
We then moved into the output phase,
Yeah.
the psychological discipline of selling a better future rather than a cognitive load of features,
Yes.
and the radical, often physically painful power of saying no to 100 good ideas just to achieve ultimate simplicity.
And finally, we explored the emotional core, relying on a primal love of the craft to survive the inevitable bricks to the head, all culminating in a rebellion against the status quo.
A true rebellion.
The sources we explored today leave us with a very direct, very confronting question, and I want to pose it directly to you, the listener, as you go about your day. What is your dent?
It's a question that demands real introspection. And building on everything we've unpacked today, especially these profound themes of connecting invisible dots and the extreme discipline of subtraction, I want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay.
We discussed how simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, and how you genuinely must say no to 100 perfectly good ideas just to achieve it.
Right.
If that is true, perhaps the greatest act of rebellion isn't actually what you choose to create today.
Then what is it?
Perhaps true rebellion is looking at the perfectly good, perfectly safe things currently in your life and finding the courage to destroy them to make room for your legacy.
Wow. Destroying the safe things to make room for the legacy. That is a heavy, brilliant thought to end on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.